here we go. Definitionally, what I talked about in April, there's a few key concepts that we have to just be aware of. Number one, what is a business model? And what we talked about in April was a business model is how you deliver value. That's what it is. So in the context of a business, okay, a business delivers value to its customers. We'll talk about customers in a minute. One thing that I'm going to try to touch on as I go through today is that a lot of these concepts don't just apply to businesses. They apply to anybody that's delivering value in any relationship that meets the constraints of what entrepreneurship is all about, which is why it relates really to all of us in all of our lives. So business model is how you deliver value. Who do you deliver value for? We talked about this in April. You deliver value for your customers. And this is critical because it's only the customer that can determine what is valuable. Okay, what you think is valuable is really not important. You might have a theory about what you think is valuable, but it's really kind of humbling that you need to take a step back and say, the person or persons that I want to determine what I'm doing is valuable are your customers, okay? So in the case of a business, it's someone who's remunerating you with money for what you're doing. In the case of a relationship, a personal relationship, or your relationship with your boss, if you're trying to think about using this tool for your boss is your customer because they're the ones that have to decide whether or not you're delivering value. And the same goes for your relationships, your significant other, your children. It doesn't really matter, okay? They can all be your customer in the context of the tool that we're going to be talking about. The next item we talked about, which I need to briefly cover, is what is a value proposition? Now, I'm going to throw this word out a lot today because it's really at the center of the tool that we're going to be talking about, a value proposition. We need a working definition so that we all agree what this thing is that people call a value proposition. And I'm going to propose that for purposes of our discussion today, we consider a value proposition something that is why your ideal customer chooses you and none of your competition, nobody else, okay? So when we talk about a value proposition, it has to be why your ideal customer chooses you. Not any customer, but the customer you're targeting, okay? Customer you're targeting specifically that you want to achieve value. Why they would choose you, why would they say yes to you and none of your competition? That's what a value proposition is. Okay, let me think if we covered anything else. I may have to come back if I skip something. A couple of items that will be posted on the Trusted Board article that I drafted up are kind of first principles about what makes us entrepreneurs. And they're really key. Number one, risk, okay? It's really all about risk. So entrepreneurs manage risk. They manage risk in the context of the future. Okay, so I also am a teacher of business strategy. And so a lot of this entwines a lot of strategic concepts as well. A working definition of strategy, I would propose you consider to be deploying finite resources under uncertain conditions, plan to deploy finite resources under conditions of uncertainty with the intention of winning in the future. So that's what strategy is. People use these terms and they're not exactly sure what they mean, but if it fits that characteristics, you are playing a strategic game, whether you realize it or not, okay? So I like to try to convince people, it's usually not very hard once you realize when you're dealing with the future, okay, that's uncertain. No one can see the future. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, okay? So whenever we're considering and contemplating what we're going to do in the future, we're playing a strategic game if we choose to be engaged in that game. And I would recommend we all should choose to be engaged in that game, because if you're not actively engaged as a strategist, then for sure you're going to be a pawn in someone else's strategic game, okay? Because it meets those characteristics. So we realize we don't know the future. The future is unknowable to us mortals. And so we're playing in a strategic game, okay? And that game involves assessing, managing, thinking about what are we going to do about risk, okay? And it's what we think about and how we manage that is what makes us an entrepreneur. Now, before I introduce my tool, or the tool that we're going to talk about today, I brought my show and tell. Some of you know what this is. Who knows what this is? Vic does. Speed square, right? This is a speed square. I don't know if you can see that on camera.
Speed square.
Pardon?
Toy speed square.
It's a toy speed square, right? So why did they develop a speed square? What's the speed square all about?
To draw square angles quickly?
No, it's not actually.
For roofing.
It's for roofing. This little thing, if you know how to use it, enables you to quickly make compound cuts on wood. When you have roof joists, roof elements coming together at different angles, if you know how to use the little markings on here, okay, you can do some pretty complicated stuff. Now, if you're Pythagoras or Brother Vic, you can calculate these, okay? But that takes some time and it's prone to making mistakes. So the wise people that do this over and over again have come up with this handy dandy tool called a speed square, which allows people very quickly, once you know how to use the tool, to make these cuts very, very quickly, saving errors and saving time. So the tool that we're going to introduce today is a tool that's been developed just like a speed square was developed. People that contemplate these things involving uncertainty in the future have thought back to all their failures in the past, what worked, what didn't work. How can we help people contemplating the future, contemplating something that might be entrepreneurial, think about delivering value to their customer? And what is the tool I'm going to be introducing to you tonight was first presented by a guy named Oscar Wilder in 2008. So it's a relatively new tool. It's called the Business Model Canvas. The purpose of this tool, okay, the tool in itself will not get you anything, okay? Just like a speed square, if you know how to use the tool and you're very experienced, it's likely to get you better results with experience, okay? This is not a tool that once you know what the tool is, that will automatically tell you what the answer is. But it's a tool that if you use it the way it's intended to be used, okay, is likely to uncover things that you have not considered and you're going to want to consider. So that as you pursue the future and you pursue uncertainty, you're likely to uncover things that you need to think about, okay? And depending on how well you think about the future, think about those things, you're more likely than not to be prepared for what might happen. Now, this is an interesting concept because we're living in a time of uncertainty, maybe more so than ever before. As entrepreneurs, in good times, people work hard to try to uncover and create change. When everything's stable and people are doing well, it's nice because people that are on top of the hill, right? They like to be on top of the hill. Things are working and everything is great. But when something disrupts that, we end up with an opportunity for change. And change has been forced on us globally as a result of COVID and a number of other things, not to mention the technological change that happens very, very rapidly in the world that we live in. So it's a unique period. It's one that true entrepreneurs look at. If you're on the top of the hill, you're not happy with what's going on, okay? If you're king of the hill now, but given the disruption that's happened, it's an opportunity for people that have the ability to think like entrepreneurs. They have the ability to look at the future and try to organize that complexity into a plan of action that you might be able to successfully execute on. Okay? So, have there been any questions yet?
Not yet.
Okay. So, what I'm going to do, this tool is meant to be very lightweight. Okay? Now you can log on, you can find many tools, you can go on the internet and pay $10 and join somebody that can get you a business model canvas tool that'll help you fill this out. Okay, one of my favorite sayings is tools are also weapons. Okay, just because I give you a chainsaw does not make you a lumberjack. This tool is not one that requires anything, but it helps you, but a piece of paper and what's between your two ears, okay? So I like this to be lightweight. You can do this on the back of a napkin, and if you're skilled at using this tool, just like a speed square, you can execute and use this tool with frequency very, very quickly. So I'm going to show everyone how to draw the tool because there are 9 boxes. That seems like a lot of boxes. Yes,
Before
sir.
you start, just a quick question. Would you mind if we took screenshots while you draw?
Not at all. What will get posted actually has a slide that has this picture on it. If you look up business model canvas, you will see this. There are 8 gajillion mentions of a business model canvas. Okay. But how I like to suggest you draw this so it'll look familiar is you draw a big rectangle. Sorry for making this basic. Big rectangle, and about 2/3 of the way down, you draw a line across the bottom. And then you draw 2 H's. H, H. Now I have 9 boxes. And this will look very familiar if you go onto the internet. Business model canvas. The purpose of this tool, is we're going to talk about it tonight, is to capture the essence, not everything, but the essence of what you are providing that's valuable to your customer, okay? And so the best way I like to present this is I go through I'm going to talk through each one of these boxes, what it means, how you need to think about it, and I'm going to talk through them, although you would do a canvas for a single idea, okay? As an entrepreneur, you may have 12 ideas, and you could do 12 business models, okay? Business model is how you deliver value per idea or per way of thinking about an idea, okay? Many entrepreneurs go through pivots and variations of this business model with extreme rapidity. If you're really on a business model that's making sense, you might go through 2 or 3 of these a day. Hey, maybe if I tweak this, what does that mean? And so this will come out toward the end of the conversation tonight. Okay, so the idea is for you to capture the essence, not everything, but the essence of what it is that you're trying to do on a piece of paper, so that it gives you some guidance about what you should be focused on right now, okay, right now. And so as I talk through these boxes, I'll let you know, but I'm gonna use examples of, this is how we would use it in corporate strategy. If you had a product that you were looking at competing with other Fortune 500 companies. Some boxes, I had really good examples, and I'll be talking about those boxes for you on a personal level. Okay, and then some boxes I have anecdotes that have to do with startup companies and small companies, and I'll use those examples to try to explain what you should be thinking about for those boxes in that context. But remember, you don't mix and match. You'd fill out all the boxes for your idea. That's how you would use it. Okay, in the presentation that Bo will, with alacrity, upload to Dropbox, there are several areas. Well, the first thing I want to talk about is from this line, imagined line, everything on this side of this box is something that is either patently knowable or obvious, or with minimal effort you can find out, okay? Because remember, this is about winning. Winning implies that you have competition, okay? It's not about you doing it yourself. It's about beating somebody. I tell my students, you want to get a date with that pretty girl, you're going to have competition. You've got to think about this in the context of your competition, not just you, okay? So everything on this side, as we go through this, I'm sorry, that's one line. Everything on this side is something that's visible. If you went into a store, you could see the products. If you saw an ad they produced and put it in the newspaper, on television, you would get some idea about how they were advertising and what the benefits of using their product or service might be. These are things that are going to be obvious to you casually. The items on this side of the business model canvas are less obvious, okay? These are more back office things. These are things that you as a person, as an individual delivering value might do that maybe you don't want other people to know, you do, okay? They might be a core competency that is secret. They might be things that you do as a company that you want to hide from your competitors that aren't easily knowable, okay? So these are trickier when you're looking at how do I create a business model canvas that will let me prevail against my competitors, because that's really what it is. But until you know how to fill this out for your competitors, you don't know if you're offering something distinct, okay? By the way, I did mention in my article that's will be on the trusted board soon. In business, just as in life, okay? If what you offer cannot be distinguished as valuable to your customer, okay, noteworthy and valuable in a way that's different, then you compete on price. It's that simple. You compete on price and luck, okay? And nobody wants to compete on price and luck. It's not a good action plan. Many people do, okay, and then they get lucky, but a lot of people compete on luck and it doesn't work out so well for them. You better be offering something valuable, something different from all your competitors. It better be attractive to your customer, enough so that they're willing to engage in you, what it is that you're trying to sell. It could be a date, it could be selling your architectural services, it doesn't matter. Okay, so that's why this tool works in many contexts. Okay, so everything here is going to be something that you can know pretty easily. Everything on this side of the business model canvas is something that, what does that say?
You're on that camera, I was telling you.
Oh, you switched me. Okay. I don't have my cues yet. I got to get my SAG card. Do I need my SAG card for this? Okay. Everything on this side is going to be back office stuff, and this should become clear as we talk through this. This section of the canvas is what we call the value proposition canvas. Now, by the way, there are books written about this, and there are books written about this, and there are books written about each one of these boxes. This has been very, very well studied, okay? And it's been studied because it is a powerful tool. So this section is called the value proposition. The idea of the value proposition portion of your business model canvas is that you have to get an alignment between what it is you're selling and what your customer wants. And if you can't find that fit, everything else you do probably is meaningless. So you want to get that right. You want to figure that out. Okay, and we'll talk through examples about what I mean here. But the center of this canvas is what we call the value proposition. We also call this the unique value proposition. The unique is really an important word. And the reason we call this unique value proposition is because it must be unique for your target customer. Not any customer, but your target customer. If what you put in this box is not one of a kind in the mind of your customer, okay, then you're competing on price. It's that simple. Hire me, I work for less than everybody else. Unless you're Walmart and you've got prices dropping, that's not good, right? You don't want to do that. You want people to hire you because they just want what you're delivering. So that's what this is all about. Come up with a unique value proposition that your customers value, and your phone is ringing also, that your customers value, and then you can name your price to some extent, which is a pretty nice place to be. We have businessmen here. It's a pretty nice place to be. So let's talk about the MVP. I'm not going to talk about MVP is minimum viable product. Minimum viable product. We also talk about that here, but tonight I'm not going to focus very much on MVP. Okay, we consider that what's the minimum thing you need to do that a customer is willing to pay you to do. It could be $1. That's the only way you can find out if they're digging what you're doing, is you get them to give you money. Okay, so what's the minimum thing? But what I want to focus on is UVP. It stands for Unique Value Proposition. So let me start out with the first of my anecdotes. And that is, I'm also an angel investor. And So I sit through lots of presentations, kind of like Shark Tank, but we all cooperate. We don't really go after each other on a personal level. Probably 5 years ago, some really smart people from the Midwest came to our group, and they were presenting a device that looked like a watch, okay? It looked like a watch, but it wasn't a watch. It didn't tell time. What this device did is when you touched it, it would pair with you. It paired with your phone, and it was a continuing recording of 60 seconds, okay? And so it would if you touched it like this, it would send the last 60 seconds of audio to your phone, okay? And then you could post that on social media. And these were smart people, by the way. They were all Ivy League types. They had gone to school at Kellogg, and very, very smart people. And I think they worked at a big Midwestern international company. Very smart. So what they were thinking is there's just not enough audio in the social media space. That's what I was hearing. Okay, I didn't understand necessarily what they were doing, but that's how they presented it. We get this thing, and what it does is you hit it, and it puts 60 seconds worth of audio. Now you can post this you can post this online, and people can hear what you heard 60 seconds ago. Okay, and so we all are very familiar with the Business Model Campus. And so we said, okay, that's your unique value prop. And we think, well, is that unique? Is there any other way to record 60 seconds? What do you think? Many, many, many ways. Okay, there's nothing unique about that. So we're scratching our head. These are smart people. They wanted, I think, $1.5 million to invest in their idea. And so we're trying to figure this out. And so the next question we asked them, so this is the value proposition box. We're going to come back to this. This box is the customer box. This is your customer box, okay? So we want to know, because this is the core, this is the center of the target. This is what you're selling. Who's going to buy this, okay? Because I'm not everyone's customer. So me as an investor, it doesn't matter whether or not I get it. You know, there are people that bought pet rocks, spent a lot of money, okay? There are people that buy empty boxes. It's a joke. Some guy sold empty boxes a couple of years ago. And that was the joke. He sold them for $10, and he sold millions of dollars worth of empty boxes for Christmas for all their high-tech friends. They could afford anything, okay? Whether or not I get it is simply not important. The question is, particularly if you're an investor, who's your customer, and can you prove to me that they are digging what you're talking about? So we asked them, who's your customer? And they said, well, they pulled up a persona of a lady, and she was sitting there drinking wine, talking to her friend, curled up on the couch with a big smile on her face, and said, well, this is Lisa. Lisa is our persona. And Lisa, last night, her boyfriend popped the big question to her, asked her to marry him. And guess what? Bam, she hit her watch. And she had captured something that's only going to happen one time in her life. And she can now post that, and what a wonderful thing that is. Okay? So we're thinking, okay, we're going to give you $1.5 million, and you're going to try to target Lisa, who thinks, right? If there are customers out there that think their boyfriend is about to ask them to marry him, they probably pay me more money to warn them than they would to buy this product, okay? I'll make some bad jokes tonight too. So we still weren't getting it, and they could tell we weren't getting it. And so the customer is Lisa, okay? Lisa is 22 to 30 years old, urban professional, lots of friends. They develop these personas. These are fictionalized characteristics of a group that you're trying to target. This is Lisa. And they could tell we weren't getting it. And they said to us, you know what, Paul, you're not seeing this. We have feedback, because they did a GoFundMe, and they sold 1,000 of these. And they said, you don't get this. We have feedback from our customers that said this product changed their lives, okay? This product changed their lives. So what I usually do when I teach a class is I try to get the class to try to figure out, which is what entrepreneurs do. This idea you have, who's your target? Like a laser beam. that would just want to have this. Not anybody that might want to buy it. Who's your ideal target? And then they shared with us, here's the letter, and the person is blind. Okay? So blind people, we get it immediately, right? I get it. Blind people do not participate in social media at the same level that most of the rest of the world does, because they are prohibited from doing that. And this is where I tell a bad joke about, have you ever seen the Instagram page of a visually impaired person? It's kind of random, right? So you could see how, it's a joke, you can laugh. You can see how this would be really powerful to the right group, okay? So, and not only that person, but that person's family. So you had a grandmother or you had an aunt that was blind and they couldn't participate in some of the stuff you were doing, but you could say, hey, I was just at the Springsteen concert. Wow, this is great. Love you, Grams, you know, boom. It could be cool, okay? And so, but they weren't marketing it. They were marketing it to Lisa. And Lisa was going to get pregnant or going to get married, okay? And by the way, they also said pregnant. They said, well, Lisa's getting married, so she'll be pregnant soon. And then that kid is only going to say, you know, mommy won the first time, one time. And if you don't catch it, it's gone forever, okay? And then they also told us about policemen could use it. I mean, a lot of people could use it. But the question is, are people falling over themselves that could use it? Who absolutely would want this desperately, okay? And they knew who it was, but they weren't focused on it. So the next box, and we're going to come back to this as we go through, but the next box is channel. This is the channel box. Okay, you're going to see how this works in a minute. This is the channel box. This is how your unique value proposition is communicated to your target market. When I talk about target market, you can literally think about a target, okay? Like a laser beam, like a laser beam. If you wanted to talk about what specific product you had and you knew your ideal customer was visually impaired, would it be easier to focus your ad buy on people that had that specific characteristic? Yes. They want, by the way, they want $1.5 million to spend here. Okay. So you go to the association that helps blind folks and you would say, hey, we've got this product. Are you interested? Right? It could be really easy to target like a laser beam. Blind people. Okay. So the channel box is how you communicate this and you land right there. Now, policemen, people in abusive relationships, people that might get their boyfriend may ask them to marry them. Those are all potential customers. But you as an entrepreneur, you don't have the time to worry about that. You don't have the money to spend on all that. You have to have a very, very specific target market. And the next thing I will say is that if you know exactly who your target is, it allows you to go and do some more research on what your unique value proposition is. If I was making a device for blind people only, it would be way easier for me to figure out how that would work than if I thought, well, my customers might be policemen and they might be this and they might be that, right? I mean, there are all kinds of things that are gonna cloud your vision if you don't know exactly who your customer is, okay? Now this group, and it wasn't my job as an investor to tell them what to do, okay? But they had a natural, it was a beautiful fit. By the way, how many blind people are there in the United States? There are about 10 million. If you could roll out, now down the road, maybe they come out with the police version, right? But if you could sell 5% of those 10 million people with a way to communicate and participate in the social media space with a targeted ad in the right before Christmas version of the newsletter that goes out to folks that have people in that community, you might do it, right? And instead of spending $1.5 million on advertising, maybe you spend 10,000. Be pretty smart, wouldn't it? So that's why we want to think about this. So this is what you communicate somehow in a very specific way to a very specific customer, okay? You need to know exactly who that customer is. Because if you don't get that customer right, you're likely not going to succeed, Okay, you can, over time, you can grow this, but you want to get this right. If you're looking at the business model canvas for your job, and you know who your supervisor is, and you want to get a raise, and or you want to be promoted soon, who's your customer? It's your boss. So it doesn't, and who's your competition?
Everybody.
Everybody you work with. So would this help you say, okay, I need to get inside my boss's brain to try to figure out how I can show that I'm the one worthy of the promotion, right? This would be helpful, wouldn't it? Okay. If you're in a significant relationship, same thing. Who's my customer? What do they value? How can I think about it? What you think is valuable doesn't matter. What they think is valuable is what matters. So this is what this tool is for. The final box, because I need to get through this in an hour. The final box is what we call the heart box. Okay. This heart box is customer relationships. And what we do, what this box is about is once you have a customer, we have this concept called customer acquisition cost. So if you're a lawyer and you're trying to get a new customer, or like Vic, if you're an architect and you've got a client, once you get that client, you want to keep the client, right? Because it's expensive to get new clients. So depending on the nature of your service or the nature of your product, you need to think about, once I have a customer, what do I do to keep that customer delighted? Okay, because you don't want to, you want to think about it. You want to think about it in the context. So this becomes the cycle of, this is what I produce. Okay, this is how I reach them. This is my customer. And once you're my customer, this is what I do for you. Okay, so let me bring an example of the heart box. And I'll use a company that we all know and maybe some of us love, Discount Tire. Okay, what does Discount Tire do for their heart box? Does anybody here love buying tires?
Free air checks anytime you drive up.
Thank you, yes. Right, who here just is dying to spend $1,000 on tires? Now there are people that raise their hand. Most people aren't, right? Most people buying tires, it totally screws them up. It's $1,000 they didn't want to spend. And if they drive another 12 miles, their tire blows out, people die, okay? It's a really weird space. The Discount Tire thought about it. And what they do here, free tire checks. And they're going to get you every 4 or 5 years, right? So how do you stay on top of people's minds once you've had them as a customer over an extended period of time, when you know your typical customer is not going to come back for a number of years? So the heart box, using the example of Discount Tire, would be free air checks and free rotations and things of that nature. Okay, but it's tricky because people don't want to be overmanaged, right? You don't want to get a Discount Tire email every 2 weeks saying, thanks for spending all that money with us, and do you need a rotation? Like, that'll just bring people to convulsions of anger. Make sense? Okay, so this is the value proposition canvas. These I'm going to do last. So I'm going to move over here to what we call the keys, and this is in the PowerPoint that will be uploaded by the worshipful here. We've got 3 boxes. We call this, well, I'm just going to call this key, key, key. Okay, this is key partnerships. Key activities, key resources. Okay. These are really important as we talk through this. What I want you to think about if you're applying this tool is that anything that goes in one of these boxes has to meet a certain standard. And that standard is, but for this, okay, my idea may not work. And that thing needs to be non-fungible, okay? But for this non-fungible thing, this idea may not work. Okay? Because one of the takeaways of this tool is you want to know as an entrepreneur, what should you focus on, okay? So if you're starting a software company and you need people to write .NET code, for key resources, you would never put .NET coders, because busloads of them could go over the cliff and you can find more. It's simply not worth your valuable effort to lock in. Now, if there's one .NET coder in planet Earth that can do what you need, you better put him on here, or her. Because this is a person you better spend some time figuring out. Because but for her, this whole thing may not work, okay? Now remember, in business, just like in your life, there are many, many things you do, but the purpose of this canvas is for you to distill out the essence of what you need to focus on, okay? Because you have finite time, right? We all have 24 hours a day, or you're spending money, you have a certain runway that you need to achieve certain things, okay? So you don't have time to focus on things like creating a logo, or whatever it is you might be working on. The question is but for this thing, does the rest of this going to be a waste of my time? So that's the same for key resources, key activities, and key partnerships. So let me go through each one. Any questions yet, Bo? I've baffled everybody with my bloviation.
No questions.
Okay, key resource. If you're starting a business or you're a service business, it's going to be you, okay? So you need to put you on there. You better pay attention to yourself. Me as an investor, if you're pitching a business to me and it's your motivation and your idea and your passion that's going to make this happen, you better be thinking about you, or I'm not interested in giving you any money. Like, if I think you're going to be living under the highway bridge and you don't have money to take care of yourself and you can't sleep at night, I'm not interested in investing my money, right? You need to make sure that you take care of yourself. That sounds a little bit backward for some people, but most of the folks you want to be involved with are going to be thinking about that. So for most small businesses, the key resource is always going to be the entrepreneur, okay? It's going to be there. Because if something happens to you, your idea is going to be unique in some way that you've come up with by virtue of living your life and having the perspective and knowing what you know, and it's likely no one else can execute on that plan. So you better think about that, okay? Does that make sense? And it has to be non-fungible, okay? So if something happens to Vic, the architect, he can't just have somebody else he hires that has an architect license take care of his clients the same way Vic does, right? It would be very challenging, wouldn't it? You can't do it. It's non-fungible. So you want to focus on things that are non-fungible. It's very, very difficult to replicate. I have a really great example of a key resource. And I saw this in the Wall Street Journal about 5 years ago. And whoever wrote this was very aware of the business model canvas because they sucked me in on the byline of this article. And it said this very famous chef who had done 10 or 15 very high-end restaurants around the world, okay? Had a great idea that he was going to call all his famous chef friends and ask them for their #1 best recipe. And that's what he was going to put in his restaurant. And then it ... and it said, and they agreed. And then you had to read 5 pages to get to the punchline. Well, here's the punchline, okay? This guy had contractually leased the restaurant space at the new Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco. Okay? That's a key resource. This guy could have done across the street from the Museum of Modern Art. He could have done a restaurant and been very successful, but he couldn't do the one where his unique value prop was the recipes of all the great chefs from around the world, right? Why would they be willing to give him their recipes, even though they're friends? Their art. It's their art. That's exactly right. It's their art. And so that is brilliant, okay? This guy had this great idea. By the way, I ate at that restaurant. It's very expensive. You twig stuff. I did eat at that restaurant.
PowerPoint is online?
PowerPoint is now online, so you could pull up the PowerPoint. So does that make sense to everyone? So this is really, and this happens all the time. If you have access to something and no one else has access to, okay? And because of that, this might work when you put it here. If not, like he would never put for key resource, I need another chef and a sous chef and they need to order dishes. Everybody doing a restaurant needs all that. What about you that's different is what you put on you try to capture here. Not about what about you is the same, okay? So that's an example of a key resource. By the way, Michael Jordan basketball player, and you can do this for you. Michael Jordan basketball player, key resource is what?
Jordan.
Michael Jordan. Like he couldn't say, well, when he was playing, he couldn't say, I'm going to take the year off, coach, and I got Paul here. He's pretty good at that three-pointers. Like, no. Like, but for Michael Jordan, his making money, okay, as a basketball player, doesn't work. Okay, so that's what goes into key resource. Key activity. I have lots of stuff. This is a really important box, okay, because this is your strategy. Key activities. What is it that you do? What are you doing now? What do you do? So my first example, I have multiple examples for this box. My first example is I like to talk about quick time. Does anybody here buy gas at quick time? Some people.
Quick program, quick time.
Quick, what's it called?
Quick trip.
Quick trip. Quick trip. Okay. What is it? Anybody? So what about quick trip might you like?
They say hello and greet you every time you walk in the door.
Oh, yes. Like if I'm having a bad day, I might just tell my wife I'm going to Quick Trip, right? Because they're always nice. You go in there and they're just really nice. They're really friendly.
They work on both sides of the register.
What? Tell me more. Tell me more. They do. They work on both sides of the register.
Very fast, they can serve multiple customers at once.
And what else can they do? It's clean. Can they count change?
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
yeah,
Like if I stopped this morning at Circle K to get gas, I'd still be fighting for the right change, okay? That's not what they do. I would submit to you, okay, this is a back thing, but if you're Quick Trip, what is it that they do? What's the key activity that they do so that people want to be loyal to Quick Trip? They're clean, they're fast, and they hire the right people, right? You go in there, you look at their name badge, been here for 10, 15 years. They're friendly. It's like they said, hey, Paul. I looked down, I didn't even have my Paul belt buckle on. Like, how? Dude, how did you know my name? It's unbelievable, okay? So what is it, what do they do? What does Quick Trip do? But more
they sell
generic.
gas and food.
Well, yes, but so yeah, they do a lot of things, but what's the essence of what they do? That they better get right.
Customer service.
And who controls that? HR. They get HR right. They hire the right people, they train the right people, they pay them enough that they keep them around a long time. That's what they do. And oh, by the way, you can buy Doritos there. But what they do to compete with Exxon, like what is Exxon? Is it Exxon? What does Exxon tell you? Or Chevron, what does Chevron tell you?
They clean your gas or something.
Yes, so Chevron says, buy our gas and we've got Techron. Okay, this mysterious thing that goes in the gas. Does anybody believe that? I don't know. But you know what? You look at their advertising and you can tell what they think you as a customer might flip your switch. Okay, because it's obvious. But if you go into Quick Trip and you understand how this canvas works, you can say they get HR right. Okay, they get HR right, which means they probably spend more money in HR than the competition. So if you were on the board of Quick Trip and they were doing analysis versus all their competitors, and they said, "Hey, boss, we're spending 3% more on our HR than Exxon and all of our competitors." If you were smart, you'd say, "No, that's what we do. That's how we compete. Okay, that's what we're all about. And we better get that right because that's what we do." Make sense? So another one I like to talk about is everybody knows who Ryan Lochte was. Ryan Lochte, he was a swimmer in Brazil in the Summer Olympics.
Yes.
What's the story on Ryan?
He had a look, didn't he?
So Ryan Lochte won a medal. Then he went out, got over imbibed with some friends, got caught on a video camera urinating. And the police came, he lied to the police. And people were asking him about that. And then he was on the phone with his mom on the Today Show, and he lied to his mom. All kinds of really bad things happened, okay? Ryan Lochte, by the way, is a spokesperson for Rolex and high-end brands, okay? A lot of money he made. So Ryan Lochte swimmer is one business model. Ryan Lochte is a representative for high-end brands is another business model. What would Ryan Lochte's key activity, what should it have been? He didn't have my class, by the way. Otherwise, he'd have got this right.
Honesty.
Yes, don't commit moral turpitude, right? It's really easy. Like you're making millions of dollars a year. Don't lie to your mom. Get drunk and pee in public. Really? And guess what? He did that, and he lost millions of dollars a year. Just like vaporized, gone. And all he needed to do is keep his nose clean. So this is, what is it that I need to do? Okay. Now that's as a pure entrepreneur. Okay. We did Quick Trip, which is an ongoing business. If you're thinking about starting a business, what goes in the key activity box is what do you need to do right now, that you better figure out so that tomorrow when you get up, you still want to pursue this idea. That's your activity, okay? People get so far afield on this and they lose focus. I'm working on my logo, I'm setting up my LLC, I'm trying to figure out what island I'm going to buy in the Caribbean when I make $1 billion. It's all wrong, okay? You've got an idea that's nascent. And you've got all kinds of hypotheses on here that you haven't validated any of them yet. What are you going to be doing right now, this afternoon, right now, in order to make this idea still worth your time tomorrow? And that's what goes in that box, okay? And this is something you can do in your relationships. If you've got a date night with your wife, key activity. What are you going to do, okay? And it's tactical like crazy because it's what you're going to do right now. So that's key activity. Okay, key partners. This is a tough one. Most folks get this wrong. If you have a business model that requires lots of partners, you have a complicated business. People don't want to invest in complicated businesses, okay? So the goal here is not to have who might be, this by the way is not a business partner. This is somebody that's not you, that's not your customer, that's not who you control, that you need, but for that person, you might have a challenge delivering the rest of your business model. That's what a key partner is. Okay, and I'm going to give you a couple examples. If I was Paul's Painting, Home Depot would not be my key partner, because any painter could go in and get the contractor discount at Home Depot. It doesn't meet the state. Now I want to do it, yes, if I'm painting. But it's not a key partner, because if Home Depot goes out of business, what you're saying is, I'm out of business, I guess I'm going to go into plumbing. No, Home Depot goes out, can you get paint anywhere else? Sure. Why would you spend any of your finite, valuable time focused on a relationship with Home Depot if you're a painting contractor? It's not worth it, okay? So don't put it here. That's not how this works. Let me give you an example of a student I had a couple years ago that wanted to get a job as an intern with Microsoft in Seattle, I think. And the internship, by the way, this is expenses. I'm going to jump ahead for a minute. This is revenue. That's R-E. I'm sorry. Revenue and expense, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But it's key because all of this implies you're going to be spending certain money and you're going to make certain money. So this is what you do at the end when you try to figure this all out. And this young lady had a challenge. She had the opportunity. She wanted to go. She hadn't gotten it yet, but she had a lead. She thought she could get this great opportunity being an intern at Microsoft. It could change her future. Her customer was Microsoft, a very specific internship program. Okay, and so she was doing research to figure out how, once they read my resume, are they going to just be falling all over themselves to interview you? Because that's what a resume is, right? Your resume is your value prop. What makes you different from everybody else? That's what your resume is. If your resume is what makes you the same as everybody else, you better put in there and work cheap because you compete on price. Okay? Resume is what makes you different. She was working on that, but she was very concerned because this particular internship did not pay enough money that when she graduated, she could pay her student loans and afford to live. Okay? So she was concerned that the revenue potential of this opportunity, okay, would not make enough money for her. So I was talking to her, and she told me, oh, by the way, after talking to her for an hour or two, the best man at her parents' wedding is a guy who lives in Seattle. I said, oh, okay. Well, is your dad still on first name basis with this gentleman? Yes, I think he is. I said, okay, well, he's your key partner because you're going to ask your dad to call him up and say, hey, Bob, if my daughter gets an internship at Microsoft, can she live in your basement for 6 months? Okay. And guess what? It all worked out. It's really cool when that happens. But for having a free place to stay, the rest of this would not work. That's a key partner on a personal level. Make sense? Are you getting it? Questions? Let me give you a very famous case. Okay, this is an espresso bullet. You know what Nespresso is? Okay. Nespresso, Nestle owns Nespresso. When they first came out with this, their idea of a business, and by the way, you can look this up and see many, many business cases using the business model canvas for the Nespresso. This is a very famous case. Nestle, 100-year-old company, was trying to figure this out. They had this idea that because of the CAC, the customer acquisition cost for high-end white shoe law firms, they had this way to make really fresh, really great tasting coffee, really high-end, okay? No one would really care what it was per dose. When you went into that law firm, people are gonna want to be able to, because they don't have a barista there, they wanted a way to make really good, high-quality coffee for your clients. And so their initial rollout was, they spent a bunch of money, they developed a machine that was fairly large that would go in this high corporate headquarters, big offices, downtown New York, and the product they developed was this, but it would go inside this machine that would cost, I don't know, $25,000, $30,000, $40,000. Okay, anybody here knows lawyers know that, I think should know that if you had a white shoe law firm and you asked them to get 200 partners to agree on changing the coffee service, is that something that's going to happen easily? Like, no, right? Screw this up. But they'd spent a lot of money, and they developed and patented this one thing, and it only worked in their machine. By the way, what would the channel be if you had this and you were selling your customer was white shoe law, high-end law offices and corporate offices in New York City? What would your channel look like?
Legal review magazines, maybe? Or
Yeah, well, what else?
the bar?
Probably be personal, right? You'd hire salespeople. Salespeople are really expensive. They get flat tires, they cause problems, they flirt with people. It's not good, okay? So they spent years, 2-3 years pushing this, and they were getting almost no traction, okay, through their sales representatives. For the reasons that I think most people would think about if they had thought about it like this. So they fired the person in charge of this product. How much time do I have?
You're at 1 hour.
1 hour, okay. 10 more minutes. They fired the person who was in charge of this, and they hired a replacement. It was pretty bright. I think kind of understood some of this. This was before 2008 when this business model came out. But they said to him, your job is to land this plane with everyone alive. We're not going to invest. Nestle is Nestle, global corporation. We're not going to invest one more nickel in this. Okay, we've got warehouses full of these. No one wants our machines. Get us out of this, and this is your stretch job. And that's all. And they gave him this job. So he went off and he thought about it, and he said, you know what, I think our customer's wrong. If I think I could sell this to high-end houses. So he went back to the board or his chain of command and said, hey, can I get some money to invest? By the way, Nestle, we all know what Nestle invests in typically, right? He went back and said, if I had some money, I'm pretty sure I could develop a machine and we could sell this to consumers through Sur La Table and these fancy places. We could sell this, and I think it would work. And Nestle told him, get out of here. We told you we're not spending any more money on this, okay? But the guy was determined. So he called some of his friends, By the way, selling a coffee machine is a little different than selling a Hershey bar, right? It's just different. It's a different business altogether. Nestle is not in the business of selling electronic products for kitchens. Okay, it's totally different. So he went to some of his friends and said, hey, will you make a machine that only makes this? And we're Nestle, by the way. We've got 8 billion of these, and we'll make as many as machines you can sell. Will you be willing to spec the R&D, and will you get 100% of the profit for selling your machine? I don't want any of it. But your machine will only make our capsule. And they agreed. Okay. They made the machine, they distributed the machine, they sold the machine, and it went from being the worst product in the history of Nestle to the best over 5 years. And guess what? The product didn't change at all. The business model changed. The model changed. So they started selling this through the internet only. Okay, so this box changed. Product was the same. Customer was high-end homes. Okay, and they introduced a key partner, someone willing to make, distribute, and sell the machine. And Nestle didn't get one penny of that money. They didn't care. They just wanted to sell this. Okay, so that's a good example of somebody that, you know, if you're looking at your situation and you rethink your business model, there may be some really tremendous opportunities there. How does someone like the Dollar Shave Club take on Gillette? Global behemoth, 90+% market share. Okay.
Find a different way to distribute.
That's right. I mean, so the razor's blue instead of whatever, okay? Gillette thought they were competing in a certain way. You go into the store and everything's locked down and you're gonna steal a razor with 12 razor blades in it. The whole thing is insane. Like, dude, just wanna shave. Right? I don't want to go and wait for someone to unlock the cabinet because a razor blade cartridge costs $15. They were competing on all this gee whiz technology. And you know what? Someone was really smart and they said, you know what? People don't give a crap about any of that. They want to shave, sell it to them. It just shows up at their house. And they took Gillette to its knees. And all they did was change the business model. Okay? So that's how this works. You've got to understand in context of your competition, what do they think you're selling? Can you sell something that you think people might want, okay, that no one else recognizes? And if you can put those things together, you might be onto something, okay? You might be onto something. So I like to talk about this. People don't, if you're doing this for yourself, the key partner when you start out is either going to be something that's just really obvious or you're not going to spend any time on, okay? Now, once you've done this, and by the way, I do a whole class on this, we do a whole semester. So I'm going through this pretty quickly. Once you do this, now you say, what would our ideal customer, if we get it right, be willing to pay? Okay, and you put that here. And then you say, what will this, including in the case of Quick Trip, extra money for people who can count change and everything else, what that you're doing differently is going to cost above and beyond or different or less than your competitors. And you put that here. This is about the deltas. It's not about everything, okay? It's about the deltas, okay? And now you have a canvas that allows you as an entrepreneur to think about very tactically, how do I focus my energy? Because whatever's on here is something you better figure out if it's true. Because a lot of this you make up. You think it could be. Now you got to go prove it. So this gives you a tool for you to go out into the world and say, is this true? Do blind people want this? If they do, what features and functionalities do they want? How much are they willing to pay? Can I validate it? Okay, and this is very true, by the way. If you have an idea that you've got a product or service and this meatball is large enough, okay? And you can validate these people want this and you can do it profitably, you will not have a problem getting financing. You'll have no problem. The world is awash with people looking for the right opportunities. But if you go out into the world and say, my idea for business, believe me, they're gonna love it. Get the hook out. No, okay? If you can validate this somehow, this is what you're doing, it's unique in their mind and they're willing to pay for it, you've got a business on your hands. Okay. So how does all this relate to, I think I've touched on it a few times today, but how does this relate to your personal life? Okay. Just like entrepreneurs, we deal with the future. The future's unknowable. It's risky. We're trying to figure this stuff out. Okay. We all have customers, like it or not. We all deal with people. Okay. And those customers may be our girlfriend, our boyfriend, our wives, our kids. These are people that you want to provide value to, assuming you want to provide value. By the way, this tool works perfectly for that. Okay. You know, my wife wants to take a trip. Well, that's going to cost money. Where are you going to get the money? So there may be some of these boxes that kind of fall out of place a little bit when you take it on a personal level, but you can certainly use this on a personal level. So when you're thinking about the future, how do I become a better person? Whose lives can I impact? And by the way, the more specific you can be with this, the more likely you are to be able to focus your energy on things that are really meaningful for your customer. If I know I want to get a job with a company, and I know who the hiring manager is, and I can research that hiring manager, and I know the kinds of people they hire, and I know what they like and what they don't like, is that going to allow me to be able to adjust my value proposition so when that person reads my resume, I'm a better fit and likely to get an interview? Of course it is. So the more specific you can be here on a personal level, the better. What exactly does my boss want? How can I outperform everybody else looking for that raise? Okay, who's my competition? What are they doing? Does my boss value what I'm doing that no one else is doing? This allows you, and by the way, on a personal level, that's your key activity box. If you only had a master's degree, or if you got a certification for a certain kind of technology, that would help you get a better job or a promotion, key activity. By the way, that certification is going to cost you $800, right? So put it down. You say, I better go get this certification because if I can make this part of my compelling, unique story, I become more valuable to my customer. My customer is going to value me more than everybody else. And that's a good thing. And by the way, how do you maintain relationships? Any questions?
I have it.
Okay.
And it relates to the idea of key partnerships and how it relates to your unique value proposition. So I'm going to give you an example of a historic architectural firm with three partners: designer, a technocrat, and a marketing person.
So those would be here.
Right.
Okay. Not partners in the way that we use them.
Not partners in mentioned.
Okay.
I'm talking about business partnership is that. Now, in those, it's very easy in those key partnerships to agree on the unique value proposition and say, here's how we're going to do it. So you have agreement that sits there. And you have, I guess another way to put it would be, you have comprehension that, we have the same unique value proposition. It seems like you have to have the same kind of agreement and comprehension between whoever becomes your key partner, whether it be the structural engineering guys, and your unique value proposition. And it seems like those key partners, they got their own thing going on. They really don't care what you're doing. They've got their own thing going on. You sometimes have to marry the two.
So Vic, that's very perspicacious. That's exactly right. One of the reasons we want to have one of these as a small business owner is that we can radiate and communicate what we do to the people that we work with. Okay, so everyone is on the same page. This is what we do. So when you're interviewing a structural engineering company, you say, look, my customers continue to come back to me because I deliver plans that, whatever it is you do, they better understand that. And this helps you unify. Now they're going to have their own, yes, but this helps you get your mind around what your value proposition is and allows you to communicate it to people that you need to understand what it is that you're doing. Same thing with employees. If you know why your customers use you, this helps you explain to your employees why their role in your company is valuable. So yeah, this isn't psychology and how do you get 3 stubborn people to agree. That's something different, but you can see how this would be valuable. If you really understood what makes you tick and you validate your customers wanted that, this becomes a very powerful tool to allow you to communicate. And I tell young students that are starting businesses, you need to have this done so that when you think about bringing on somebody that's going to be a co-founder with you, you know exactly what you're going for together. Okay, this becomes a communication tool. So when you do something that requires you to change, maybe a pivot, somehow change something on your canvas, you have a way to visualize it and communicate why you're doing it. We thought this was true. We thought we could communicate to blind people through the newsletter of the American Association of Blind People. We thought we were going to get 4% sell through. We got 0. Didn't work. Okay. What are we going to put in here now? What's wrong? Do we need to change our value prop? Do we need to refocus what we're doing? Do we need to change our advertising? Very focused, very specific.
Newsletter for a blind association.
Well, it goes to the family. I know.
We have a question online.
Okay, question online.
And Brother Andrew Hayes would like to know, what are your thoughts on having a cross-purchase plan or key man planning? Is that necessary? And if so, when does it come into play?
Okay. Yeah, I have ideas on that. It's a little outside the scope of what we're talking about, but if you have an existing business, particularly one if it's a service business, you better be working on that all the time. You better have an idea of if something happens to you, what are you going to do about that? And by the way, if you ever want to sell a business that's a service-based business, if you haven't thought through that and have pushed down responsibility and have people that aren't owners, that are employees and likely loyal and likely understand what it is you're doing, the value of your exit of that business is severely impacted. Okay, so you want to be thinking about that. But by the way, one of the things we look at all the time, and again, this is addressing that question, people are yawning, but is your business model a franchise opportunity or is it a service business? Right? So obviously, and I keep looking at Vic just because I've known him for a long time, but if you're an architect, it's a service business. People hire you because of you. You have a hard time scaling this, which means you better figure out how to do what you want with these people to be paid well for it, because that's how you're going to get money. You're not going to have an exit where people are going to give you $1 gajillion. Because when you're ready to go right off into the sunset, they're going to say, well, once you're gone, these clients could easily go bye-bye, okay? And so it's really tricky, and that's something you have to be aware of when you're looking at your business. And by the way, you can look this up online. You will see Ford Motor Company, large Fortune 500 companies use the business model canvas, just like pure startups, okay? So this becomes a very handy tool in many contexts if you know how to use it, yeah.
That brings up a good point about disclosure. I would think there's a time here too. So if you're developing a new product and you've got your market identified and all this, and your customer identified, and you have your channels figured out, to divulge that in the general public, then could in one time frame lose your edge. In another time frame, it could be the way that it could be your channel by divulging your canvas.
Could be. Oh, the starting point is a student comes to me and says, I've got a great idea for a business. Okay, what about it is unique? So if you're starting a restaurant, it has to be unique in your service area, right? It doesn't have to be unique on planet Earth. If you're starting something that's a service, that's software that's going to be going around the world, you better have something unique that you can prove to me a specific measurable target market wants.
We have a brother who started a restaurant called Ramen Hood
Okay.
in Scottsdale, selling ramen noodles.
Okay, well, there you go, right? People buy pet rocks. If it works, I don't know, but they should say, why do I have the chairs I have? What's the lighting all about? So there's better be something about what you're offering that's unique, that's your value proposition, that you think people care about, that you can substantiate. Otherwise, you don't have anything. Okay, you're just hoping it all works out. Okay, and that's not a good plan.
So I'm wondering how this canvas might work. You're tailoring for, say, a creative endeavor. So let's say you're an author, you're writing a fiction, you want to say, pink the creative process and picking the demographic and then tailoring art to the demographic, or are you starting from and trying to figure out who goes?
Well, if you're a renowned artist, you can probably do whatever you want. If you're trying
We can't hear the questions from the lodge.
that publishes the kinds of things that you're thinking about writing, and you better have that on the back of your mind, even though it may constrain your creative juices, because you're not going to be a writer if no one ever publishes.
Bo, if I could break
As you
in,
get started, there are constraints that you need to think about, I would say. And you know, who else is writing content? Why would they publish their content, not your content? And there are only so many people they take on as new writers are, right? Those are all things that you should research and understand. And the better you understand that, the more likely you are to have traction when you approach them about publishing your idea.
Can you repeat that question? I'm not sure everybody heard it online.
Okay, the idea was, if you're a creative and your business is involved art, being an author, how much effort, I'm going to put words in your mouth, how much effort do you spend trying to figure out the elements of this box to the extent it may constrain what you do that's creative? Like, should I just do this and people are going to love it and I'm going to be the next J.K. Rowling? Okay, yeah. That's probably not going to work out for you. Right? So did I answer the question?
Yeah, that's exactly.
It's very smart, because you got to have a little change in the bank. Otherwise, you don't really get any degrees of freedom. You've got to make money. Okay? Money is how our society decides what you do is valuable to your customer.
Can I tag on this question? Because
No.
why?
Sweet.
And then there's the hobby, you know? Can you apply, this is kind of weird.
Absolutely.
You can apply this to a hobby.
Sure you can.
So can you repeat? They can't hear the question.
Okay, the question is, can you apply this to a hobby? So as a person that in strategy and in entrepreneurship, where I don't know the future, I'm expending finite resources, pursuing whatever it is I'm pursuing, I'm in a certain game. There are tools that will help me think about that in a more fulsome way. Do I want to take advantage of those things? And so if you're spending time on a hobby, okay, you absolutely can apply this, because your hobby is going to mean you're meeting new people. Those new people may impact you in a certain way. How do you want to approach those people? What's the meaning of those things, right? And I think that it's pretty. The world has accepted the fact that the more, if you are a polymath, if you have lots of interests and you're good at lots of different things, you're way more likely to find opportunities in your life than if you focus like a laser on only one thing. So hobbies, you could say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to join Toastmasters, okay? Just because I want to speak better. But you know what? I'm probably going to meet some pretty cool people. Maybe 10 years from now, that may be the difference between me getting a job or not, or me meeting my future ex-wife, right? So I would say, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, what do you need to do to participate in a more full way in that hobby? Okay, the people I meet I want to be a bike racer. I want to ride bikes, okay? Are you going to go right away and join a group that rides 150 miles up and down to Lake Pleasant every day? Probably not, because you know what? It's not going to work out. So you can say, okay, what should I be doing so that I can get with that group because I want to be with it? By the way, as I said early in this conversation, once you've been through this a few times, and by the way, I'm learning things about this. I've been using this for 12 years. I teach this. Once you get this down, just like a speed square, you could pull it out and in 5 minutes, you can have your mind, hey, that's a good idea for business. Let's do a business model. Boom, boom, boom. Maybe that's okay, good. Let's go figure this out. Final thing I want to cover, unless there are more questions.
Not yet.
Once you do this for an idea, the very last step, and you can do it in 5 minutes. You get up in the morning, you've had a fever dream about this great idea, whatever it is, okay. You fill this out, and it doesn't take long. This purpose of this is not for you to do something that's going to take a long time. It's for you to focus your creative energies on the most important thing. Once you do this, you say, what is the most important thing that I've listed here that I can't prove is a fact? Okay. And that's what you do today. That should be your key activity. So if you think blind people want this, but you can't prove it, you got to figure out a way to go prove it. If you think that people that are blind, their family members read the newsletter from the Association for, Benevolent Association of Helping Blind People, whatever it is, can you go figure that out? Sometimes it's research, sometimes it's learning by talking to people. By the way, a customer is always the best way to learn. Someone who's paying you, now you can get feedback that's valuable. So this becomes something that if you're a dog on a bone, on a business idea that you've got a canvas on, if this isn't changing at least once a day, you're probably not doing anything. Okay? Because this thing is meant to be, this is my idea, this is my spark. Is this true or not? What is the most important thing? Can I really build this for that much money? Geez, I don't know, I better go figure that out. I think it's about $100, but maybe it's 10,000, I don't know, right? But if you get stuck, a lot of entrepreneurs do this, by the way. They're not sure what it's going to cost to build, but they're not willing to put a line in the sand because they're afraid to know the truth. Or they don't want to know if anybody else is offering this product. I get this all the time. I've got this great idea. Is anybody else selling it? Oh, I don't know. Well, go look it up. Well, I'm afraid to because I'm sure someone is. Like, yeah, right. Someone probably is, 99% of the time. They don't want their dream to go away. But you as an entrepreneur, you want to move on to something valuable because you only have 24 hours a day. You got to be focusing your energy on things that are valuable to you now. There's only so much runway. We say the pilot game, right? Runway behind you, an altitude above you, do you no good. Okay? So if you spend 6 months working on your logo for a new business idea and searching out islands you're going to buy with your when you go public, and you haven't done anything to figure out this and validate your business model, you're really wasting your time. Really wasting your time. So this allows you to focus your energy on what the most important thing is. Okay? Any other questions?
Online, that's what they have a question about.
Online? Folks online? How many do we know how many people are online?
We've got about 11 now. We had about 13 to 14.
Okay. So if anybody online has any questions, now's the time to ask. By the way, so Bo will be publishing on the Trestle board an article I wrote trying to make the argument about why we need to get your mind around this concept of risk, and having finite time and understanding customers is really important.
Okay, what about packaging?
Okay.
So I'm thinking that's going to be a key activity if you have ideas.
Let's repeat the question.
Okay, so a patent, if you have one, may be a key resource. Maybe. Most people want to patent an idea, but a patent for 98% of the people is not a good idea. Okay? So Elon Musk, someone asked Elon Musk, have you patented any of the technology with SpaceX? And he gave the answer, which elucidates the entire thing. He said, who's my competition? Because that's how you have to think. The government of China. Are they going to respect your patent rights? No. When you get a patent, it's a trade-off. I tell you everything I know and what I'm doing today, and you get to try to make it a little bit better and then patent over that. Okay? And so his attitude was, I'd rather have 6 months or a year head start than patent it, knowing my competition is the government of China, and there's no way to prevail in court. You just won't win. They're going to steal. And I tell students all the time, if you have a good idea, it will be stolen. Okay? A friend of mine is a lawyer for Microsoft, and he runs 24/7 teams of lawyers around the world, and all they do is negotiate with Apple and Dell and all the other technology companies about the difference between what each of them has stolen from one another. And they never resolve it. You stole $1.2 billion from us. Well, you stole $1.3 billion. All right, let's negotiate on $100 million. And then next week they get together and they say, well, no, we've since discovered you stole our swipe and you stole this. It's a people will steal your idea. Many, many examples of this. So if you have the ability to write a patent, if you're going to do a deal that's a licensing deal, then you probably want to get a patent. But that's a whole other discussion. Generally speaking, for most small entrepreneurs, a patent is just a waste of finite time. Because if it's a good idea, someone's going to steal it. And by the way, you don't have the money to defend yourself in court for whoever stole it, because it will crush you. When you get a good idea in business, choo-choo, competition's coming. So you want to get, GoPro is a good example. People just sat around watching GoPro make above average returns for a couple of years, and they were plotting and planning. And guess what? Choo-choo, they're coming. Sony's coming. They're all coming. And they thought, oh, everyone loves GoPro. That's how the universe works. They're coming for you. It's just a matter of when they're ready. And there are companies that specialize in that, by the way. They specialize in reverse engineering and coming back as fast followers or second movers. They're not interested in figuring out the crazy people because they're really complicated, right? They want to wait till you figure it out, and then they're going to come, and they've got a global footprint. You can build something a third of the cost you can, and they're going to crush you. If you're not ready with your next thing, you're going to be in trouble. So patents, generally speaking, now large companies get a lot of patents because they have lawyers. They have rooms full of lawyers, and that's all they do. They'll patent anything. You know, they go to the bathroom and come back and they get a new way to, you know what. They'll patent it because they're patent lawyers and that's what they do. But for a small person, small company spending finite resources and time, for you to spend $10,000 or $20,000 on a patent, it's probably 10 or 20 that you should focus somewhere else, I would say. Most of the time. And I'm not a lawyer, although I did sleep at Hampton Inn last night. Good question. Thank you very much. Okay, anything else?
I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Read my trusted word.
It's also posted on the Facebook event. I posted the link for the
link for the slides.
Yeah, it's on
Okay.
the
The link
Facebook
for the
event.
slides, and then. Okay, so go be you're an entrepreneur, whether you know it or not. So go be one. Might as well